Now, I get the sense that a fair few FPL managers are going to use their wildcards in Game Week 8. And if you're one of those managers, I've got not one, not two, not even three, but 4 wildcard drafts to take you through. All right, I'm just going to start the video by going through some teams and some players that I think are pretty much locked into all of these 4 drafts. First of all, I think you need a piece of the Arsenal defence. I've picked 2 Arsenal defenders in pretty much all of these teams. Unless you're in absolute financial turmoil in FPL, I think this is probably the way to play it. They are just the best defence in the league, in my opinion. The next 5 fixtures are really good. And you can see here, courtesy of Elevenify, clean sheet odds as well are really good. I'll leave a link to Elevenify to see the clean sheet odds yourself. For me, I think 2 outstanding Arsenal defenders for me would be Gabriel and Raya. But you've currently got a 0.4 million gap in the pricing of Gabriel and Timber. And I would probably say Timber is not quite as good as Gabriel, but probably you get what you pay for with both of them. So if you can't quite afford Gabriel, I think I'd go for Timber. Saliba is also, I think, just as nailed on as Gabriel and Timber. But I just don't think he offers the attacking upside that the other 2 do. Calafiori, he's good, but I think in terms of minutes, he's probably the riskiest of all 5. Now, in addition to the Arsenal defence, I do think the Crystal Palace defence looks pretty good as well. Up until their loss against Everton, I think they went something like 18 games unbeaten. And the way that you go 18 games unbeaten is by being defensively strong and difficult to beat, right? So I think on the whole, they're a strong defence. They don't necessarily have the greatest fixtures in certainly the next 2, but I still think you're probably going to be able to rotate your defence across FPL, right? That seems to be the meta at the moment. In most of the drafts, there's rotation available. And I think these are the 3 that I'd go for, right? Munoz basically plays as a winger for Crystal Palace. He's going to be really good for attack and returns, picking up DEFCON here or there. Mark Gahey, I think, sits in the middle of... he does sit in the middle in terms of Munoz and Richards and Price. I think he is, leading the way in terms of attacking returns out of him and Richards from like the centre halves. But he's not quite as good as Richards for DEFCON points, whereas Richards is basically almost getting DEFCON every game. And he's still just 4.5 million in the game. So I think a bit of Arsenal defence, a bit of Palace defence is a way to pick your team. I also just wanted to say before we get any further into the video, all of the data you're about to see relating to the players I talk about, and also the expected points data you're going to see with the teams comes from Fantasy Football Hub. If you sign up to Fantasy Football Hub using the link in my description below, I'll get you 50% off. And if you prove to Fantasy Football Hub that you don't win your mini league at the end of the season, they'll give you your money back. Now, moving on to some individual players, I think Senesi is pretty much nailed on in all of these teams. I think the guy plays for Bournemouth, who are a really decent defence in terms of those sort of mid-table-ish pushing for Europe teams. I'd put them in that category at the moment, Bournemouth. He is, they are the best defence in terms of expected goals conceded. And Senesi is basically printing DEFCON points. I said Richards is good. Senesi is on a whole another level. He's only missed it once so far this season. That was in game week 7 against Fulham when he got subbed in the 77th minute. So this guy's keeping a decent amount of clean sheets and pretty much hitting DEFCON every game. So he's basically scoring 4 points a game as a sort of floor. And he's only 5 million. I think Senesi's got to be in pretty much every wildcard draft you put together. I also think another Bournemouth asset, Semenyo, he's probably one of, if not the best players in the game at the moment. If you're on your wildcard, I think you just have to pick him in your team if you haven't got him already. He's going up and up in price. He's now 7.9 million. But I still think he's a fantastic option, even at that price point, right? And I'm not sure if it's gonna stay that way because Kluivert's back in the fray now for Bournemouth. But the last penalty, if I'm not mistaken, the last penalty Bournemouth had, Semenyo took. So what you've got here is a player that's just absolutely nailed on, not playing European football as well. So, there's going to be no rotation for that. 9 attacking returns from 7 appearances. They took Bournemouth's last penalty. Another player that's in pretty much every team as well. He might not be on penalties, but I really like what I've seen from Ismaila Sarr so far for Crystal Palace. He's scored 3 goals from 4 appearances so far, 6.5 million. I think he's really good value. And he, especially without Eze in the setup for Crystal Palace, I think he's got even more attacking responsibility for them this season. And yeah, he makes pretty much all of these wildcard teams. Another one in Bukayo Saka. He's not in every team, but he's in most. And I think the decider for me was the fact that this weekend in Game Week 7, he took a penalty. And both him and Gyökeres were on the pitch at the time. So that goes some way to suggest that he's probably on penalties for Arsenal. And it might sound like a mad thing, but if you've got 2 Arsenal defenders, you've got room for 1 Arsenal attacker. Obviously, you can only pick 3 players from 1 team. And for me, the fact that Saka took penalties really differentiates him from Gyökeres. So yeah, and especially with the other midfielders in the game at the moment, not necessarily living up to the hype, the likes of Salah and Bruno Fernandes in the main, I think Saka looks like a really good option. So he makes a lot of these teams as well. It goes without saying that Haaland's in pretty well. He is in every draft. I think he's just the best player in the game at the moment. Not in terms of like pound for pound value maybe, but he scored 9, ridiculous amount of returns so far, right? I should say 9 goals from 7 appearances. It's just ridiculous. Fixtures coming up are pretty good. I wouldn't even be too concerned about the Liverpool at home fixture, to be honest, given how Liverpool have started the season. But yeah, I think week on week, he's probably on average the best captain, and he just has to be in your team, right? Another couple of players, we're whizzing through these. Alongside Haaland, I've either picked in most of these teams one of or both João Pedro and Mateta. Now, João Pedro is probably outside of Haaland the pick of the forwards. Although one thing that is concerning me about him a little bit is how many returns he's gotten from the expected returns that he's put up. So he's put up 1.55 XG and 0.23 XA. He's got 2 goals and 3 assists, so 5 attacking returns from less than like 2 expected goal involvements. Yeah, interesting. Whereas Mateta's on the other end of the spectrum. So he scored 2 goals this season, but he's put up 4 XG. And he's, I think, going to be taking penalties for Palace as well. So it's an interesting one with these two. In some drafts, both of them appear. In some drafts, only one of them appears. You'll see how it works as we go along. I just wanted to introduce you as well. I've spoken about this in some previous videos. A lot of what I'm covering, I've covered in videos this week, but I find it hard to not repeat myself and also be truthful in the sense that I'm talking about players in my videos that I think you should buy. So therefore, in a wildcard team, I'm going to recommend those players again. So bear with if this is a little bit repetitive as to what I've been saying in previous videos. But what we've got here is some data from Solio. It's my one of, if not the best, expected points projections alongside Fantasy Football Hub that I've come across. It's just interesting to see where players sit, basically. So despite me thinking that Haaland is the best option, the Solio data still suggests that Salah is going to be up there, and in some weeks is the best player in the game for expected points. Just quite interesting to track that one. So what we've got basically in the teams that I'm going to show you, we've got teams with just Haaland in it, and then teams with Haaland and Salah if you want to, change up the captaincy. And there might be an argument that in some game weeks coming up, Salah might be a better captain than Haaland, or other players, you might prefer to captain other players, for example, to Haaland. In fact, I think the next slide should show that it does. So what we've got here is a view of upcoming captaincies. Now, I think in the game at the moment, there are 5 players that you'd probably want to captain. Those 5 players probably being Saka from Arsenal, Palmer from Chelsea, obviously Salah from Liverpool, Haaland, and maybe Bruno Fernandes. You look at the next few weeks for Man City, Everton at home, Villa away, Bournemouth at home. You could probably make an argument that Haaland is the strongest captain. But in a couple of those weeks, Palmer, if he does play, has got Sunderland at home in 9. And then, interestingly, Saka's got Burnley away when Man City play Bournemouth at home. And then in game weeks 11 and 12, Haaland's got Liverpool at home, Newcastle away. 2 relatively tough fixtures, whereas someone like Palmer's got Wolves and Burnley. Saka's got Sunderland and, Tottenham's quite tough. But you see where I'm coming from? So you want to have in mind those weeks when you're planning as well. So not necessarily when picking your wildcard draft up front, because I think, for the next 3 or 5 weeks, I think, 3 weeks at least, Haaland's probably the best captain. But I think that's probably worth keeping in your mind just on players you might want to pick in your team and then also target later on. I don't necessarily think, given he's not fully fit, not confirmed fit, I don't think you can pick Palmer right now. But at the same time, you could make room to potentially bring him into your team at some point. All right, so we'll get into the teams now. So what I've got is essentially there's 4 teams I'm going to talk you through. This team has no Salah and is prepared for a bench boost. So I think one differentiator that people might have is whether they've used their bench boost already. And I think if you're on a wild card, it's the perfect opportunity to set your team up for a bench boost. So what I've got here is a team with It's got Haaland in it as your captain. It's got Saka, and it's also pretty well, I think, prepared for a bench boost. Now, I did these graphics last night after I finished work, because I do this alongside a full-time job, so forgive me. There's a couple of, I think in the main, one player's gone up in price since then, and that's Senesi. You can see on my bench at the moment, I've just benched him for Anderson for expected points. He's gone up to 5 million. So the team value of this team is 100.2, but I think pretty much everyone watching this video should still be able to afford this team. And if you really need to drop some cash, maybe going for someone like Elliot Anderson over Caicedo, something like that might help you. But I think most people could probably afford to put this team together. So we've gone for Gabriel and Raya, I think the strongest Arsenal defensive double up. In fact, if you want to save a bit of cash, you could go Timber over Gabriel as well. Richards and Anderson, who are basically, two of the best DEFCON defenders in the game. I've benched Senesi just purely on expected points from Hub, but if you want to start Senesi, it obviously makes sense. Semenyo, Ismail Assar and Saka, alongside Iliman and Jai, who isn't quite the level of just absolutely essential, but he's close in my mind because he takes penalties for Everton. He's gotten off to a decent season from an attack and returns point of view, and he's also putting up decent DEFCON numbers as well. So yeah, I think he's almost like a mini Bruno Fernandes at 6.5 million, but one that's actually putting the ball in the back of the net recently. So yeah, that would be, and obviously Haaland, João Pedro and Mateta. I've gone for the three of them up front. So this would be no Salah, but you can bench boost if you pick this team. This team is a little bit stronger, still doesn't have Salah in it, but it's not ready for a bench boost because you've got Mark Gu there on the bench, who's a bit of a sort of cheap placeholder. So it's pretty much the same team. This one I've actually put Senesi in the 11. But essentially, if you don't have a stronger bench, you have space to get Bruno Fernandes in your team and no João Pedro. So I've saved a bit of cash on João Pedro and gone for Mateta. I actually think comparing the two players, it's quite tough to look at the stats and still pick João Pedro. So I've gone for Mateta. You might be able to afford Pedro. Go for him if that's the case. So this team on, I would say, starting 11-wise is a little bit stronger, but is obviously weaker on the bench and not ready for a bench boost. And the inclusion being Bruno Fernandes, who I think has had a tough start for FPL owners because I think he's hit 11 DEFCON 3 or 4 times and missed 2 penalties. So imagine that he got one more sort of clearance, block, interception, tackle, and then scored the 2 penalties. He'd have like 20, 25 more points than he actually does. So I do think it's a little bit unlucky how he started the season. I do think he's a good option. Probably not absolutely essential or quite as good as Saka, but I'd still definitely consider him for my team. So yeah, this is, like I said, no Salah, a stronger team, but you can't bench boost. This next one, I've set it up with Salah in it. So you can't bench boost, but it's got Salah. So you have the option to switch captaincy from Haaland if you fancy it. So it's got Raya in goal, Richards, Timber and Senesi. So I've dropped Gabriel for Timber. Salah, Semenyo, Sarr and Jai and Caicedo in the midfield, and Haaland and João Pedro up front. It's 100.6 million this team value. So if you need to drop a player or two, I think you could definitely drop João Pedro down to Mateta, save yourself a little bit of cash. If you really wanted to, I think you could probably change Raya out for a cheaper goalkeeper. Someone like Vicario, Pope, someone like that maybe. And I think maybe dropping Caicedo to Elliot Anderson as well, or even going for a 5 million midfielder like Dewsbury Hall or Stack from Leeds, someone like that. Xhaka even, he's done pretty well. Sunderland Xhaka for 5 million, so you could find the value there. In fact, if you did just drop Caicedo to Xhaka, that gives you 100 million, doesn't it? So there's plenty of options to change this team around. But yeah, this has both Salah and Haaland in it, so you can switch the captaincies if you fancy it. Dubravka, Anderson, Rodon, and then Mark Gu on the bench, so you can't bench boost it, but I still think if you're not planning to use your bench boost in conjunction with this wildcard, I think this team works quite well. And finally, this one is quite expensive, but there are ways to save some cash. This is 101.2 million. I think there may be some players that can afford it, but it's got Haaland and Salah in it, but I've made it in a way that you can bench boost. So Raya, Richards, Timber, Senesi is kind of the template backline. Again, you could drop David Raya if you wanted a cheaper keeper. Salah, Semenyo, Sarr and Caicedo in midfield. Again, you could drop Caicedo if you wanted to Granit Xhaka, something like that. It says Senesi on the bench. It's got Anderson on the bench, Haaland, João Pedro and Thiago up front. So this is a kind of team you can build with Salah in it to bench boost and then some options to maybe save some money. So yeah, 4 different teams there, 4 different ways of playing your wildcard in picking players. hopefully there's one that resonates with you and you actually want to pick. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel if you haven't already, which should be just here on your screen. And yeah, that's everything, I think. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.